are actually streaming. Not going streaming. All right. Hey guys, Alex Kozora here, SteelersDepot.com, back with our Monday live stream. Just give me 1 second to pull things up on my end so I can follow along in the chat and answer your guys' questions. Just me tonight. Dave's on vacation, but I wanted to do this live stream just to talk with you guys, hang out, and really kind of just do it in lieu of the podcast since there is no terrible podcast this week until Dave gets back to Vegas. So if you guys can hear me, please let me know. I'm assuming the audio sounds good, but I just want to double check that before we start the stream. Do this for about a half hour today, maybe a little bit longer depending on how the chat goes. But I did want to talk with you guys and touch base. Desmond, thank you for being here. I know you were the first person to be in the chat about an hour and a half ago, so I appreciate you stopping by. Same with Dastani and Trevor and K Jackson, Mutated Genome, James, Rob, John, I think Corey as well. Jason is here. So, okay, Bizzle Nizzle says that I can be heard, so that's good. Again, drop your question in the chat below, and I will do my best to answer it. If you want to have your question be guaranteed to be asked and answered, please send a super chat, and that'll go to the top of the line. And as soon as we're done with the question that I'm talking about, we'll get to your super chat. So we'll start things off here with John Pennington. And by the way, Tom Mead had his first Steelers mock draft go up on the site today. Interesting approach and kind of a unique angle he took with it, and the way he laid things out, I really like. I'll kind of scroll through it as we go through the live stream. All right, John Pennington says, Alex, do you think the running backs other than McFarland fit in a Canada offense? I say no. What do you think? I know what you mean, John, in the sense of, McFarland being that space player, someone that can be used in jet type situations and in that classic Canada offense. We've seen him run at the college level. I don't want to assume, though, that the other backs can't find a way to fit in the offense just because they're not that kind of a guy. Now, obviously, there's got to be talent upgraded here. You really need a better lead back, and I think they're going to address that throughout this draft, potentially with Najee Harris at 24 if he's there. Um, so I don't want to say that there's no home for a guy like Benny Snell, for example, but really, assuming Connor's gone, you're going to go in with Snell and McFarland. Samuels will be in camp. We'll see if he makes it. He'll be outside looking in, I believe. But really, the question I think just primarily goes around, does Benny Snell fit in this offense? And as a short yardage, potentially kind of a guy who's going to work hard, not going to kill you. Isn't the upside's not very high, but the downside and the floor isn't terrible either. In a quality special team player, I think Benny Snell has proven to be a really good special teams player, covering kicks and punts. He's the right wing on punts, and that's something he didn't have to do at Kentucky. And he's taken a lot of pride in it and done a really good job there. So I do think he'll have a home on this roster. So basically, long story short, John, I think the way this thing will go is, a running back drafted probably within the first 2 to 3 rounds. Again, Harris at 24. I'm not saying that I would definitely take Harris at 24, although I'm a big fan of Alabama's Najee Harris. But if he's there, and provided there isn't a quarterback that they want to take, it's going to be, I think, really tough for Pittsburgh to pass on Harris at number 24. But let's just assume rookie running back plus McFarland plus Snell. Samuels will come into camp and he'll be there for injury or maybe even a practice squad if the expansion of those rules continue in the 2021. So they're going to draft a running back, though, and someone who hopefully does fit in that offense well, like maybe a Najee Harris or Kenneth Gainwell, someone like that. Rob James is here, says only people I trust for Steelers news. Appreciate that, Rob. Mutated Genome, did Dave make it to PA yet? He's going to be here in a couple of days. He's down south right now with a buddy of his, so he's not in PA, which is good because we're getting a lot of snow and sleet and all that, although the south is getting just hammered right now. So hopefully you guys who are living down in Texas and Louisiana are staying safe. Mutated Genome says new OC with new offense, new center, probably 2 other changes on the offensive line. Overall, less talented team in 2021 last year of contract. I know you can't speak for Ben, but why would he want to play another year? It's a valid question. I think it just comes back to Ben and him being a competitor, and he's just the most competitive guy on that team. I mean, everything he's done, the stories teammates have told, he wants to win, he wants to be competitive, so he probably doesn't view the situation quite as drastically as you do, Mutated Genome, although I think your assessment is fairly accurate. But I think he is confident in himself, confident in his guys, and things like that. Plus, his body feels good. If his arm felt poor and he didn't feel like the elbow surgery was a success, or that he felt like that he was the same guy coming off the surgery, then he may have hung things up. But if his body feels good and he's a competitive guy who has that never say die attitude, then you're seeing him come back. And he wants to honor his contract, which is what he said for a long time now. And he's signed through 2021. So that's a component as well. Corey, glad you could be here. I hope you're staying safe with the weather. All right. Jason Bodine says, Evening, Alex. Hello, Jason. Considering the growing list of needs, not to mention dealing with a tight salary cap, what are your thoughts on the feasibility of any trading down scenarios are? Jason, I've always been in favor of trading down. I think that's underutilized by a lot of teams, and especially Pittsburgh. I believe Colbert's only ever moved down in the first round once, and that was in, I think, 2001. He moved down, I think, 3 spots, picked up a fourth round pick or so to get to end up taking Casey Hampton. But I think in a year like this, especially, you want to have as many darts to throw at the dartboard as possible and give yourself as many chances to hit on a draft class. It's going to be very difficult to evaluate for obvious COVID related reasons. The lack of a college season for some schools, especially smaller schools, no combine, just harder to get information on these players in general. So the wider net you can cast, the more players you can just draft, the overall better chances are of hitting on those guys overall are than just hoping you just hit on your 7 or 8 draft picks. Plus, as you're mentioning, there's a lot of needs to fill as well. So it's not something Colbert does. So I'm not really expecting it. And obviously, I would be happy with trading up to get a quarterback if you think he's a franchise guy, at least in principle. Whether or not I like the guy they take, hypothetically, is a different story. But I don't like the odds of them trading down. So good question, though, Jason. Again, be sure to ask your questions. I'm here for about 7:30, bottom of the hour, maybe a little bit after as well. Send a super chat if you want to have your question be guaranteed to be asked and answered, because we have a lot of questions here already. K. Jackson Pittsburgh says, Alex, I understand J.J. Watt is a very good player, but with our cap situation, is he really a need? He's not a need, and it's funny you asked that question. I'll have an article that basically touches on that point in the morning on Steelers Depot, so to look out for that one. It kind of explains an in-depth answer of why J.J. Watt's a talented player, and I get the story aspect of it, but he is not a need. It is a luxury. All right, scrolling down through. Trevor Barnes, do you think we should draft a quarterback even if Ben comes back? I think you have to be in the hair on fire, red light siren going off mode, Trevor, of, you have to assume that 2021 will be Ben's final season. Not that it's guaranteed, but you have to assume it. And if you find a quarterback in the draft that you really like and you view as the potential franchise guy, the heir to Ben, you have to take him even if assuming that Ben returns in 2021. So I think you're in the hair on fire mode. I think you're no longer in the let's build around Ben and win with Ben mode, although obviously you're still trying to accomplish that, but you have to start planning for the future, and the future starts now. High ground, is it more important to take a tackle or center in the first round this year? I mean, tackles are always inherently more valuable. The left tackle is just the most important position along the offensive line. Though center, I think, could be argued as a close second. Some people would even say more important than left tackle. To me, I just look at the value of it. Who is going to be the better player? And that guy's going to be plug and play. He's going to start right away. He's capable of doing that. And that's why I kind of put that focus at. But inherently, I think tackle has more value. Tackle's a stronger class overall. Now, you could argue that 2 ways and say it's a strong class, so the value is going to win out at 24. Let's take a tackle like Liam Eichenberg or Tevin Jenkins or Alex Leatherwood. You get the idea. Mayfield out of Michigan. Or you could sit there and say, well, it's a good tackle class. Maybe somebody falls to us at 55. We got Marcus Gilbert in the second round back in 2011, but there's a risk there associated with that because those tackles that are good usually are gone by the first 5-10 picks of round 2. Mark Ralston, Alex, thanks for doing this. No problem, Mark. Seems like the chances of drafting a starter is much better in the third round than fourth. Any chance Steelers get a third for Hargrave or definitely getting a fourth? The projections from Over the Cap, Nick Corte is the comp pick expert. I am not, but he says fourth round pick, and so I trust his information, his predictions and instincts, and just based off the math, Hargrave's contract just not quite big enough to warrant a third round pick when you look at deals with Tom Brady and some of these other marquee tier 1 free agent Scott. So I think it's pretty safe to say a fourth round comp pick's coming for Javon Hargrave. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. Let me get a drink of water and pull up a new article. Over on Steelers Depot, got a lot of content today for you guys to check out. Article I wrote saying why 2021 could be year of the pistol for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Pistol seems to be a great compromise for what Ben wants to do and prefers to do, and what Matt Canada's offense, kind of how it works, and not having to be under center quite as much. Brock B. I'm not sure how to say your last name. I know it's a long shot, but if Ben does retire, what should the Steelers do, or what do you want the Steelers to do? Go find a quarterback. Go get that next quarterback by any means necessary. I think that's what I would want to happen, and what the Steelers' approach would be. All right, Destiny Collins. Do you think we should try to address our offensive line mainly in free agency in order to target other positions in the draft? Wouldn't be mad if we take an inside linebacker in the first round to help our current group. Problem is, Destiny, there's just only so much capital that you have to spend. Money's going to be tight, even if the cap comes in at say 180 to 185 million, which it appears like there's a good chance that it will. And offensive linemen are not cheap, especially in free agency. There's a scarcity on offensive linemen. They're hard to find. The college system does not produce a lot of them, and so when those guys become available, they get paid big bucks. BJ Finney got, what was his deal? 2 years, 10 million for being a backup spot start center guard. So imagine a quality starting longer term guy on the market. Those guys will not be cheap, and so you really just won't be able to afford them. And there aren't that many available in the first place. Now you may do a stopgap option, which is a Kevin Colbert specialty of get a cheap veteran. A reunion with BJ Finney makes a lot of sense. So you have kind of a veteran guy there to compete with a potential rookie, or if you don't draft a rookie high or at all, then you have some cover. And so that's probably the more likely approach they take with a BJ Finney, Calvin Beachum type, as opposed to some sort of really outstanding offensive lineman. Stanton Smith, how well do you think Ben fits in Canada's offense? We'll see. I think there's some compromise there, but a good coach is supposed to be able to tailor his philosophy with the personnel of his players. And so I think Canada is smart enough to recognize that. So I think there'll be some limitations for sure, but I don't know if it's going to be disaster either. I don't think it will be. David M., hello. The Steelers have so many needs. So which positions do you think they can address via free agency? I'd say go after Stephen Carson or Marlon Mack to address running back, concentrate on other positions. I think you mean Chris Carson, I'm guessing. I wouldn't spend money on a free agent running back out of the draft one that's younger, less wear and tear, cheaper. So I probably would not invest in a free agent running back. And it's really just about who's cheap and who wants to come to Pittsburgh. So that could be a variety of positions. There's going to be a lot of holes there. Probably a lower level offensive lineman or two, maybe a tight end. I think he could, get the band back together with bringing back guys like BJ Finney, Kelvin Beachum, who I mentioned, Jesse James, assuming he gets cut by the Lions. Also, Finney has to get cut by the Bengals, but he almost certainly will, coming over in the Carlos Dunlap deal. So just whoever's cheap, and that could go in a variety of different directions. And Zach, kind of same question, same answer about free agency predictions. I'll have a more detailed article at some point closer to the start of free agency, but I think the former Steelers kind of going all William Gay, Bryant McFadden, bringing back those guys like Finney, Beachum, Jesse James make a whole lot of sense. Dustin Stover, who do you have as your top 5 tight ends, and which tight end do you think would be worthy as a round 1 or round 2 selection? I don't have a top 5 list right now. There are a couple guys I really like. Kyle Pitts, who will almost certainly not be there at 24. Don't like to be that guy that says he won't be there, but I don't see a scenario where Kyle Pitts is there. I like Pat Freiermuth. I'm also a big fan of Brevin Jordan out of Miami. And then the tight end class kind of starts falling off for me there. So I think if you get a Freiermuth and maybe a Brevin Jordan in round 2, that would be maybe your ideal scenario. Mike, thank you so much for the kind words there. Appreciate it. Let me get back up to your questions here. Again, be sure to send your questions, like the stream, subscribe if you would like, and send a super chat if you want to have your question be guaranteed to be asked and answered. Paul Brown says, I'm still on the get an offensive lineman at all costs round 1 train. Why draft Harrison the first if he won't be able to run anywhere? Draft Hubbard in late day 2 while getting offensive tackle and tight end in rounds 1 and 2. That's fair. I get that, and I would tend to agree with you, Paul. But you have to just look at value too. And if you think Harris is really good and he's a better grade significantly than any offensive linemen who are available, then you got to consider that as well. I mean, this is a team that's found some, later round options and guys that have worked. UDFAs like Ramon Foster and Villanueva's story, but we all know that. So you can develop guys even if they're not first round picks. Beachum, 7th round pick. Marcus Gilbert, a 2nd round pick. So you don't have to take one in the first round. But point well taken, Paul, and I do agree with you. Jessica Herbert, they're saying that he's going to be gone at 24, talking about Najee Harris. Yeah, there's a good chance of that, but I will say, Jessica, that if you look at the last 3 years, the highest a running back has gone is number 24 overall. That was Josh Jacobs to the Raiders. What was that, 2 years ago? Not that that means a whole lot. Get the precedent doesn't change things a whole lot, but just something to point out about the lack of value for running backs and how that position has been devalued. And you have a strong class, a quarterback, a strong class along the offensive line, and that could push down a guy like Najee Harris. Receivers also really talented. So when you have those really strong positions that are more valuable, receiver, offensive line, offensive tackle in particular, and quarterback, three guys going top five, a couple others probably going in the first round, that could push down a guy like Najee Harris. So we'll see. The Dolphins at 18 could certainly be a team who takes Harris, and they seem to be interested in him as well. But I think it's kind of 50-50 at this point, whether or not Harris is there at 24 or not. Deso to 729 talking about trading out to get more picks. Maybe I'd be in favor of it, but that's typically not what Kevin Colbert does. Paul Brown talking about Jesse James. Would that push tight end lower on the needs list? To an extent, sure, Paul, but I want this team to invest in tight end. I'm tired of them. I want to bring back Jesse James. I'd be fine with that, but I do want to get a longer term option and someone that's younger you can really develop, so you don't have to constantly go through this cycle of trades and free agency signings. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Granted, drafts work the same way, but they've not taken a tight end in the top 4 rounds since 2007, and that's got to stop. Duck Swagger, people say JJ doesn't fit with us, but I mean, he's freaking JJ Watt. Can't he still be productive rushing off the edge or at nose, Alex? Yeah, I get your point, and he would help for sure. But is it your biggest need? The limited resources you have, are you going to spend it on JJ Watt? So would you find a home and a place for a guy's talent as JJ Watt? Yes. Would he be as effective playing the nose or some sort of edge type rusher? No. And so that wouldn't be maybe an ideal situation. It'd be some sort of rotational 1 and 3 tech with Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. But again, in terms of the resources you have, how limited you are, is it worth spending those precious dollars on JJ Watt? I would say no. MW, do you remember Art and Colbert stating they wanted to keep Bud and TJ together? Has something changed? Because if they could keep Juju, then Bud should be in that tier. I don't remember that specifically. I know Rooney was giving the boilerplate. We'd like to see, our free agents come back whenever he was asked about any name in particular. I just think Dupree's going to cost too much. And if he wants to be on a 1-year deal because the market's cold, you don't really have the space to push that money around. A multi-year deal will be better for the Steelers financially in terms of how you can structure the contract. Good questions here, guys. Appreciate you being here. Let me find the next one. Tyler Moore, can you give a quick rundown on who you think is least likely to be retained out of these? Hilton, Sutton, Tyson, Filer, Connor, and Al. How would it impact guys like Vince or Hayden, if at all? The two guys that I'm pretty confident will not return is Villanueva and Hilton. I think Hilton has a better chance than Villanueva, so I'll put Villanueva as the least likely to be re-signed. When Connor, I don't think Connor comes back either, so maybe I put Connor just in terms, not from a financial standpoint, but just they're going to move on from James Conner. So I would say Connor, Villanueva, Hilton, and then from there, Filer, Sutton, Alualu is how I would rank it. Frank K, if we did sign Juju, does that mean we would not be able to retain Alualu or Alualu? I still get that wrong sometimes. No, I mean, Alualu is going to be cheap, so I mean that's not going to prevent the Steelers from being able to re-sign him on a minimum salary benefit type contract. Benor Johnson, I saw your analysis on Kellen Mond. I've been studying him all day. Do you think he could possibly be a franchise quarterback, especially in Pittsburgh? That was Devin Jackson that did the report on Kellen Mond, not me. So he studied him a lot closer than I have and watched Mond at the Senior Bowl. I think he had a decent week down at the Senior Bowl, but I probably not on a franchise quarterback. But that's a question that'd be better suited for Devin Jackson than myself. Joel Coleman. Hi, Alex. Hi, Joel. Are there any free agent centers not Finney that could be an option for next year? Yeah, I've seen some names out there. Corey Linsley, Ted Karras, Alex Mack. Is he still in the league? I'm not sure where his status is. Maybe. I haven't explored that enough yet, though. So I'll get back to you, Joel. But sure, there are other names. We don't want to be so hyper focused on just one name, like BJ Finney, and be blinded and have tunnel vision to other potential free agents. because Finney's not going to solve all this team's problems. I mean, that I think is pretty obvious. Duck Swagger, Alec, what happens if the cap somehow came in at 195? Do we keep most of our guys like Juju easy? It would certainly help. I don't know if everyone would get retained. You still probably lose guys like Dupree and Villanueva, but the higher that cap is, and 195 basically staying flat, just a slight decrease would be awesome, be massive for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Duck Swagger, Kerry Vincent's Mike Hilton Jr. I didn't do the report on Vincent. Maybe, but I'm not 100% sure on that as a comparison. Hilton's just such a unique guy that it's hard to compare someone to the next Mike Hilton. Mango Masher, do you think James Pierre could be starting next year? Thoughts on his season? I mean, he made the team, undrafted rookie in this pandemic world, making the team's pretty impressive. Says something. Thought he did a nice job as a gunner overall, and jumped Justin Lane as that left outside cornerback by the end of the season. So they like him. There's progress. The tape is limited, especially on defense. Hopefully, we go to camp this year and we can watch him. But in terms of him starting next year, we'll see. That's a pretty big leap. But they like him, and we'll see how he does in year number 2. Oh, Jessica's talking about Harris being 24 when the season starts. Yeah, I've seen that a lot, but that doesn't concern me for 2 reasons. One, he wasn't a 4-year starter at Alabama. He was a 2-year starter, so he doesn't have the wear and tear of somebody that was there for all 4 years. Granted, that's rare for a running back to be in school for all 4 seasons, but just a 2-year starter. And then B, more importantly, when you take a running back in the first round, or running back at all, you kind of work under the assumption they're not going to be here for 10 years. And that's a good reason to not take a running back in the first round. But you're basically saying, best case scenario, you're likely to get 5 years, his rookie contract, out of that guy. And then you're going to discard him and start the process all over. So age matters less. It's not like we're talking about a quarterback or it's another position like a receiver where the youth is really a big benefit. Because 23, 24, he'll be 28, 29 by the time he's gone. That's when they're going to fall off a cliff. And so it doesn't concern me as much because you're not expecting to have that guy for 10 years or having him for a second contract. Frank talking about doing a veteran signing like Fournette as Tampa Bay did. Maybe, but I kind of doubt it. I think they go through the draft. Rob James about moving Cam inside. I don't want Cam playing nose tackle. I want him playing. I mean, he plays one tech, and that's closely related to nose tackle sometimes. But I want Cam to be dominant, be a good pass rusher, be on these guards, and not take on as many double teams. And so I'm not doing anything that might hinder Cam Hayward's awesome production. Caitlin Clark, if Vince Williams is cut, would you trust Robert Spillane to start next to Devin Bush, assuming he's healthy? Yeah, I think I'd be comfortable with Spillane starting next to Devin Bush. I mean, you could upgrade. I mean, we did the report today on Missouri's Nick Bolton. That Zaven Collins kid from Tulsa is really interesting. But if Spillane was a starter, I would have no major qualms about that. Kelly saying, hey man, do you think Juju will be back? Because I heard the Raiders are interested. I still think there's a chance Juju comes back. But I think the odds are that he's going to walk. We'll see what the cap comes in. Really, in terms of talking about Juju, his chances of returning, they're very much tied to what the cap is. And so without knowing that number, it's hard to give, I think, an accurate assessment on Juju's chances of returning. Keith, with an exclamation mark, have heard the Steelers could have over 140 million in cap space in 2022. I don't know what the number is. That sounds about right. They're going to have a lot of cap space because they don't have many players under contract. I think Dave and I said 17 players under contract for 2022, including not having Ben under contract. So there's a reason why that cap number is shaped the way it is, and that does not mean they have 80% of the roster under contract and a bunch of money to play with. So that number I think is kind of deceiving, although it is technically accurate. Benor Johnson, I'm a huge fan of trading up for a quarterback. Do you think we realistically have a chance of being able to trade up top 15 for a guy like Lance or Mac Jones if they drop? Sure, I think you can do it. I mean, if you give up enough draft capital, absolutely. They did that with Devin Bush going up, 10 spots, 20 to 11 or whatever it was, 20 to 10. So yeah, you could do it. I mean, there's nothing really stopping you from doing so. And they've traded up in the past, whether that's for Devin Bush, Troy, Santonio. So been done before. And if you want your quarterback and you like your guy and you think he's a franchise, then there is no such thing as overpaying. You can go get your guy. Joel Coleman, other than quarterback, are there any glaring positional holes that need addressing in order to run Canada's offense? I think you want a running back that can work in space and be a playmaker. Now, McFarland has potential for that. I'm not giving up on Anthony McFarland, but I do think you need that, and then you just need an offensive line in general. I don't care what offense you're running. I don't care if you're running, air raid or wing T. You need a good offensive line. You need a good center. You need a good left tackle. So those are just going to be addressed really regardless of the offense that's constructed. Talking about Browning next to Bush. I have not really watched, what's his name? Brandon Browning, I think. I have not watched a ton on him. Desmond, sorry about that. Simon Keogh. Does the drop off at quarterback for the 2022 draft class make trading up to draft one this year more important? There won't be 4 potential franchise guys a year from now. I don't try to think in those terms too much because so much can happen in a year. And for all we know, the Pittsburgh Steelers are picking at 32 next year, or they're picking at 8 next year. So I think you just focus on the guys, who they are. If you think someone is able to be the heir to Ben and have the torch passed to him, you take him. If not, then not. I'm not gonna talk myself or pretend the guy is a franchise guy because the class is perceived as weaker next season. You just focus on the guys that you're evaluating, and that's when you're going to make the best decision. When you start considering these outside factors and this noise, at least in my opinion, this outside noise that messes with your evaluation process, you start making bad decisions. And so I would not think in those terms, Simon. Reality sucks. Who do you think are our first 3 picks? Is it names? I have no idea in terms of names. I mean, you saw my mock draft a couple weeks ago, but if I could tell you that about who our first 3 picks are going to be on the money, I'd be doing something other than a chat right now. I tell you that much. Fred Cam, could you see us drafting a cornerback in round 1, depending on how free agency plays out? Maybe we have Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn-Fell. Either one would make a great addition if we lose Hilton. I get your point, Fred. I'm not going to say there's 0 chance of that, but I'm really confident they're going to go offense because of all the needs, because of Rooney's mandate to get better running the football. I think that's going to be the primary focus of the draft. Maybe there's a free agency move at cornerback, maybe. But and again, I understand your point about value. And Surtain and Horn are good players, but I think it'll be offense. Kelly, do we go with offensive line in the first round or running back? I think it could go either way. We'll see if Harris is there. If Harris is not there, then they will not go running back. I don't think. ETN, I'm not crazy about, and I don't think he'll be the pick at 24. Duck Swagger, can you rank Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and Trask in order who you think will excel next level? I have not done the deep dive on Trey Lance. That was someone else, I believe, Wes for the site, who did the report on Trey Lance. I just finished up Mac Jones. A report on him will come up in the next day or 2. I will tell you this, though, Duck Swagger, I have Mac Jones ahead of Kyle Trask in our rankings. I like Mac Jones considerably more than I like Kyle Trask. I don't hate Kyle Trask. Some Steelers fans really seem to hate this guy for whatever reason, but I like Mac Jones a lot more than I do Kyle Trask. Jessica talking about Dickerson's injuries. Yeah, the medical's a concern. 2 torn ACLs, 2 ankle injuries, but the tape is excellent. So, I mean, if he's there at 55, I think he'd be a great replacement for Pouncey if he's cleared medically. We won't know if they cleared medically or not. Steelers should sign a veteran center rather than reach and draft one. Did it with Jeff Hardings and Jeff Hartwig, but whom both went to the Super Bowl. Sure. I mean, they won with a really bad O-line with that, Darnell Stapleton, Hartwig era. Cologne, I guess, was the tackle or guard. I can't remember exactly. Remember Hartwig had that holding call, that safety call, but and they probably will do a veteran stopgap option for the offensive line, but you still want to draft one. There's a reason why. 2 years after they won the Super Bowl, they drafted Marquise Pouncey in the first round, 18th overall. Master of Puppets, does Joe Hayden get his walking papers? No way. They pay him $15 million. His salary's not $15 million, and maybe there's a restructure there, but I think Hayden will return. Do you see Steven Nelson getting traded? I don't. I think an extension is a lot more likely. I really see no scenario in which Steven Nelson gets traded. Who are you going to replace him with? Not a whole lot there. Couple more questions. I know you don't like small school guys or someone that opted out. That's not true. I like small school guys. I love Hargrave at the Senior Bowl. I remember being down there. He tore it up. But David Moore, the Grambling State Center, could be the Kevin Dotson of this draft. He's been overlooked and pressed at the Senior Bowl. I mean, the thing with the small school guys is this isn't about my thoughts. Kevin Colbert said, the guys that haven't been able to watch, the guys who did not get to play this year are going to be hurt in their evaluation. So those are Colbert's words, not mine. Kelly, I don't think this team signs J.J. Watt. I know there was a report they have interest, and I assume that's true to some degree, but not enough to sign him. Tyler, say the Steelers don't land a quarterback the next 2 years. Do you roll with Rudolph Haskins, or do you trade for a guy like Mariota, Winston, or Minshew that can get you 8 wins with his defense? Well, I don't want to be an 8-8 team. That's stagnant. That's Jeff Fisher-like, and I would do everything I can to find a franchise quarterback in the draft because none of those names, Rudolph, Haskins, Mariota, Winston, Minshew, are impressive, nor will they win you a Super Bowl. So why go after them? You may do a bridge quarterback kind of thing. I understand that, but you're searching for a franchise quarterback. Mark Leslie, how do you feel our defense will compare to last season? Do you see it being a big drop off? No, I wouldn't say a big drop off. There will be a drop off, I think, but let's see who gets retained and who doesn't, and who gets drafted. And I can probably better assess that question once the draft is over. Duck Swagger, if we sign JJ, is Derek protected from getting cut? Probably. Yeah, Harding. Well, are you saying Harding or Hartwig, Jason? You're saying Jeff Harding. You're kind of combining the two. Let me get this right here. Harding's was a really good center. Hartwig was not that great of a center. He was okay. He was better than Sean Mahan, but he's not that good. If we do sign JJ Watt, can he play tight end? He may have to. And you'd rather us trade up for quarterback this year than to get one next year? I don't know about the 2022 class. I just have the idea of if there's a franchise guy this year, you take him. If not, you punt and you try again next season. Captain Spartan 04. So then what center do we get? Who's not small school, opted out, or his injury problem? I don't think Creed Humphrey falls to us round 2. I agree with you on Humphrey. I mean, there are several names. I mean, Josh Myers from Ohio State. Jimmy Morrissey from Pitt. I'm a Dickerson fan. Yes, there are medical concerns, but that might not prevent this team from drafting him. Trey Hill out of Georgia. I like 6'4", 330-pound, big physical center. So there are names. I mean, Quinn Miners, you know, he didn't get small school guys, so I understand that point. But I like Miners. So, but there are names. I mean, even if we don't talk about the small school guys, the injury, flag guys, there are still prospects out there. Kelly, do we get a new head coach if the Steelers don't make it to the playoffs? No, I think Tomlin stays. Right or wrong, they don't want to, have Tomlin go in the process of the transition from the Ben era and the Colbert era to whatever the next era is. So I think Tomlin would come back as a leader to try to rebuild and be that presence. I'm sure most people wouldn't like that, but that is the direction I think the team will go. What linebackers are you looking at? Probably don't have enough for Bud. That goes from Corey. I really haven't done a whole lot of work on edge rushers this year. A couple of the pick guys are interesting, but I have not done a whole lot of work there yet. Could we trade up for Micah Parsons if he falls closer to 24? I mean, you could, but probably not going to trade up for another inside linebacker. Jay, probably final question here. What running back would you be okay with the Steelers drafting in round 2 of the draft if Harris and ETN are gone? I like Kenneth Gainwell from Memphis a lot. I think he would really fit in Canada's offense. I know most people see him as a third-round pick. I'd be comfortable taking him at 55. In terms of other names, it's a deep running back class overall. I know people like Javonte Williams out of UNC, and there's Michael Carter, also from North Carolina. But Kenneth Gainwell was the guy that I had mocked in my first mock draft. I cut more questions because we got a lot of questions here last second. I like Kylan Hill, Chris. He was in that Mike Leach air raid offense, caught the ball well, kind of opted out. But I don't think he's a feature back, but I think he's a kind of bowling ball with good hands. Do you think Trey Lance will fall to us? No, I don't think Lance will fall to 24. They could trade up for him, though, potentially. Is Mac Jones a trade-up worthy guy who's there at 15? This will kind of spoil my report. I think he is. I really like Mac Jones. I don't know if I like him more than Trey Lance, but yeah, I think I would not be mad if they traded up for Mac Jones. Mark, thanks for being here. Why is Ben so slow and fat? 007. All right. Insightful. Let's see. Do we think we get another safety in the free agency or the draft? Yeah, probably. John Davis probably not coming back. Not a lot of depth behind him. So at some point, maybe later on day 3. Juju coming back. I don't know. Let's see what the cap number comes in at Flux. That's going to be the big driver to whether or not Juju returns. Is what is that cap number? And Benore Johnson, when's my next mock draft? I'm not sure. Probably right before free agency when we have a better feel for who's going to come back or who isn't. So it may still be a couple of weeks. All right, guys, that's going to wrap things up for today's live stream. Thank you guys so much for being here. Really had some good questions. Over 100 people in the chat. Certainly appreciate it. Hopefully Dave and I will be back next Monday. Not guaranteed that we will, based on Dave's travel and how he feels and just all that stuff, whatever's going on with me as well. But we'll have this archived over on Steelers Depot a little bit later today, so you guys can check it out if you missed part or all of the live stream, be sure to be like Colin and sub to the channel. We'll have some more Steelers content. We had the community tab and talk about the next player to do in our season in review. It'll be Devin Bush. That'll come up next couple of days, reviewing Devin Bush, the good and bad of his injury shortened 2020 season. Appreciate all the nice comments, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, hanging out with us, and we'll talk to you soon.